Merci d'être de retour. On va débuter. We'd love to start in just a few minutes, so take your seats. Thank you very much for being back in the room with us. Merci d'être de retour avec nous. Prenez place. On va débuter la session 4 donc, de l'après-midi.
We are now starting session 4 this afternoon.
J'attends que... Voilà, on va avoir des gens qui vont nous rejoindre. We'll have more people to join us. Sorry for that, but it's a big delay and we have issues on time. That's why I need to be also a timekeeper on these sessions. And so we will have the explanation on the urban regeneration through sport. And we are launching now the jingle. C'est parti. And to present this session, the moderator with us will be the former senior producer of Al Jazeera. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Yashir Khan. Yashir, welcome. Thank you very much for joining the 10th Decent Sport Forum. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. How's everybody this afternoon? So as you know, it's the session that we're going to have right now is titled Urban Regeneration Through Sport. Now, any attempt to change urban landscapes is a messy and complex business. And revitalizing places in decline is often met with suspicion and sometimes even hostility. But if regeneration is a loaded, compelling term, so is the transformation of towns and cities, making neighborhoods attractive and vibrant, creating spaces of inclusion, interaction, and opportunity. So at the end of the day, then, cities are less about spaces and more about people. Revitalizing a city is less about revitalizing places and more about revitalizing people. And the role of sport in that revitalization cannot be understated. Many of you know of a neighborhood basketball court or a football pitch or a track or a cricket ground that became a place of friendships and exchange of ideas and breaking down barriers between rich and poor. These are places where life choices are made, where a rebellion is born or a business idea is born. And our speakers today are inspiring examples of this kind of transformation, and we'll meet them shortly. But first, we have our keynote speaker today, who was born in one of my favorite countries, Jordan. Dr. Talib Rifai is the Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, a post he's held since 2010. A career policy person and a career business person, Mr. Rifai is no stranger to the world of tourism, having served as the Minister of Tourism in his home country of Jordan. But he's also no stranger to the world of cities. He began his career teaching architecture and planning and urban design at the University of Jordan for 2 decades. He said something very interesting to me just now about tourism. He said, you know, a lot of people think tourism is a big party, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what tourism also is a mechanism of breaking down barriers, of inclusion, of cultural interaction, of job creation. And so, Mr. Rifai, I'd like to welcome you to the stage to address us, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking you particularly for inviting me and making me part of this wonderful group. It's always wonderful to be here in Monaco again. I look at Monaco and I see it as a beautiful rock coming out of the bottom of the sea, showing its beautiful face to the world, and creating in the middle of all of this an exciting, romantic, most amazing experience for people to come and see and visit. Every time I'm here, I'm reminded of the goodness emanating from this small and beautiful enclave tucked in the south of Europe and overlooking the Mediterranean. Small is beautiful, but it could also be powerful. Powerful of values, the power of principles, and the power of leading by example. That's what we'd like Monaco to be. That's why this is a very important forum. My dear friends, Charles Darwin once said, "It's not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change." Today's world is at a major transformation juncture. Rapid and fast change is the essence of our time. I'd like to suggest that there are three global movements, transformative forces that are changing the world as we see it today. I would like to call them three revolutions, if you don't mind. Not because I'm a revolutionist, but because they are really revolutionizing everything around us. One is the digital IT revolution. I'm sure you all know what this has done to the world. It's changed our lives, changed the way we communicate, the way we think. Revolutions have been staged with this little gadget. So I don't need to explain how much changes have happened due to this digital IT revolution. The second one is the urban revolution. 62% of the people of the world will be living in cities by the year 2030, which means that our lifestyle is changing, our way of thinking is changing. We're completely different human beings when we leave our countryside and go live in cities. But the third revolution I want to claim is the travel revolution. And I want to just take a minute to explain why I consider it a revolution. Travel and tourism, I want to suggest, particularly in its connection with cities now, since it is all about revitalizing people, not places, in today's world, is becoming one of the major transformative forces. Despite every challenge that's on earth, safety, security, and many, many other things, in spite of all economic sectors, activities, against all odds, travel and tourism has distinguished itself from other economic sectors. It continues to grow in a very impressive way. Just think about it. Last year, 2016, there was 1,235 million, over 1.2 billion international tourists that crossed borders in 1 year. That, my friends, is 1 out of 6 of the people of the world making an international trip every year. That's not anymore an elitist activity or a French, German, British gentleman traveling to China, India, or Africa and coming back and write a book about exotic places. It's people moving. It's a very, very impressive movement. While doing so, we're generating $3.2 billion $3.2 billion every day in expenditure. Every day, $3.2 billion is spent by tourists all over the world. 1 out of 10 jobs are created by travel and tourism, and 10.2% of world GDP is from travel and tourism. So it's not anymore any marginal activity. Today is the third largest export industry in the world after chemicals and fuels. This 1.2 billion will become 1.8 billion by 2030. When Prince Charles III of Monaco decided in 1861 to kickstart Monaco's economy, the answer for him was tourism. In 1863, he established a handful of hotels, a theater, and a casino, which would flourish to become the magnificent district of Monte Carlo. It was then and there that modern-day Monaco was born, and it was then and there that tourism as we know it today were born. I could even claim, and I shared this with His Highness yesterday, that Monaco is the birthplace of modern-day tourism, without doubt. Beyond these numbers, and that's what I want to say now here, beyond these numbers and economic benefits, travel and tourism today is a major contribution to transforming our world slowly and gradually, bringing us together as human beings like never before. Together with other forces, travel and tourism is making the new world smaller, more connected, more informed, and therefore more involved. I want to claim that it's a better world because we care more about each other. We know more about each other. When girls are kidnapped in Nigeria, they're my girls. When an earthquake happens in Mexico or in Nepal, it happens in my backyard. We would think that the world is falling apart because we keep bombarded by the daily news every morning. But reality is we care more, therefore we are living definitely in a better world. Travel and tourism today is also contributing in its own way to breaking down barriers and stereotypes. Let me tell you what Mark Twain said. He summed it up pretty well a few decades ago. He said, and I quote, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely for these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of earth all one's lifetime. How true that is. So my dear friends, travel opens minds, open hearts, and open eyes. We become better people when we travel. I travel the world. I am a better person. Travel today is a way of life. I'm therefore 100% sure that 40, 50, 60 years from now, the future generations would look back at this age and say that was the age of travel. However, with growth comes power. With power comes responsibility. With 1.8 billion international travelers, we could create 1.8 billion opportunities or 1.8 billion disasters. It's all up to us. We need to change and transform human, urban, travel activities into opportunities for inclusive economic growth, for more and better jobs, decent jobs, to share prosperity, to better know each other and respect each other, to protect and enrich our natural and cultural heritage. These, my friends, are the essence of what we call the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals that were approved by 193 countries in 2015 as the 2030 Agenda for Mankind. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly achieved 3 very important milestones. One is approving the 17 SDGs. 2, in December 2015, the United Nations General Assembly approved the Paris Agreement on climate change. But 3, they dedicated this year, 2017, to be the International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development. It's the first time that the human community and the international community acknowledges tourism and travel as a development agent. And it's our opportunity to prove that this wonderful human activity called travel and tourism can shape the future for better people and better planet. The question today is, how do we harness this important activity? And how do we combine it with the other very important and noble activity called sports, subject matter of this forum, to contribute to all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 16, which is about peace and justice in the world. Goal 16 is the essence of peace. Travel and tourism is that essence. My dear friends, the world today is suffering from so many deficits and inequalities. Economic deficits and inequalities, technological deficit, educational deficit. But the one and most important deficit of all is a deficit of tolerance and understanding between people. And there is nothing more powerful than people rubbing shoulders, meeting each other to remedy this deficit. You can never, ever have feelings of animosity or resentment to people that you had dinner with, you visited, shared their stories, shared their dreams. That's the power of travel and tourism, my dear friends. Let me now try to conclude with some very specific suggestions as to how we can combine these two forces together to make sure that we can contribute to making this world a better place. Sport and tourism, I believe, have a natural connection to peace, understanding, and respect. Respect is a very important element here. First, I'd like to suggest that in staging sports and mega events bring tremendous economic benefits to local communities as well as to tourism services and infrastructure. We must therefore ensure that the benefits are maximized, economic leakages are minimized, and that the generated income is fairly distributed and appreciated by all segments of the local community. These are the economic aspects of these events. 2, in sports and mega events, we create opportunities for innovative thinking, job creation, community participation, and decision-making. We must therefore ensure that the innovative thinking, the jobs produced, and the community empowerment remains respected after the event is over and remains as a legacy. 3, sports events and mega events can create environmental disruption, pollution, and serious breakdown of ecosystems. We must therefore ensure that we turn such risks into opportunities for innovative thinking, long-term solutions that remain in place way after the events are over. 4th, most importantly, we must use every opportunity created by a sports or mega event to install a sense of pride, healthy pride, not arrogant nationalist pride, and respect, appreciation, and understanding among the local community as to the values of cultural richness and diversity of the visitors. These opportunities must be used to showcase our local culture and ensure that visitors act with respect, appreciation to local customs and cultures. Tolerance, respect, and understanding are at the core of all of these activities. In conclusion, my very good friends, I have a simple message to share with you. Whatever your business in life is, let's all remember that our core business in life must always be to make this world a better place. When we travel to places we respect, because we feel good about being in a place. I feel good about being in Monaco, because I have great respect to the people, to the culture, to the nature, to the history. In this International Year of Sustainable Tourism, that's why we use the motto, travel, enjoy, respect. Travel to Monaco, enjoy Monaco, and respect Monaco. Travel to Africa, enjoy Africa, respect Africa. Travel to Asia, enjoy Asia, respect Asia. Let me now share with you this 1-minute video on the International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development, entitled Travel, Enjoy, and Respect. Merci beaucoup.
I should grab a closer seat. It's taking a bit of time to travel from that spot to here. Thank you, Dr. Rifai. Our next speaker, I want to tell you, paid a very heavy price just for playing football and being amazing at it. Men didn't like that. This is a man's game, they told her. When Khalida Popal was a little girl, her mother taught her how to play, not just because it was fun, but especially because it was empowering. She taught her how to play football. That in itself, teaching a girl how to play a sport, is a subversive act, not only in her homeland in Afghanistan, but in many other places around the world. But being the captain of the Afghanistan's women's football team and insisting that women had every right to be on the pitch became an act of rebellion. And when the name-calling and physical attacks turned into death threats, Khalida had to leave Afghanistan without even saying goodbye to her team or even her family. She has since founded the Girl Power organization, which uses sport to improve the lives of refugee and minority women across Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a courageous woman, Khalida Popal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Yasser, for presenting me. And thank you so much, Peace and Sport, for inviting me here and for giving me pleasure to talk and tell a bit about my story here. I thought we will not have an audience. It's cool we have audience now. So can I have my presentation here, please? Yes. Why football? Why I started playing football? I grew up in a country where there is always boundaries, barriers for women. They say that women cannot play football. Women cannot have their regular basic right to function in society as man does. I started playing football because it was known as a man's game. And I wanted to stand for, and I wanted to prove that football is not only for men, but it's also for women. Women has talent to play football, to stand for their right. Women should stand for their voice, for their right. I used football as a tool for empowerment. I used football to stand for my own right as a woman that I was not allowed to stand, as a woman that a year before that I started playing football, the football stadium was used for public accusation. They shut dead the women in football stadium. I started playing football from there. I wanted to break the barriers, and I did. As a first woman, I started playing football and made history in my country. We were a group of women when we started playing football, and we faced a lot of problems because they said that it's against man honor. It's against the country's honor. Women should stay at home, should clean the dishes, and stay and do what man says. And I said no to that. I started a campaign, made a huge group of women to play with us, to join our group. And the campaign was very successful. In 2003, I started playing football. In 2004, the women's football was recognized by our FA, Afghanistan Football Association. And we were only four club of women's. We made our FA to believe that we can actually bring pride in our home. In 2017, we made our first women national team of Afghanistan. By that time, we didn't have access to grass field as boys had, because they said, the girls will destroy the football pitch. They don't know how to play football. We went for an international game against Pakistan. And we won the league in Pakistan. And we brought cup at home. And we brought pride home. It was first time in the history that women's football won the cup. And then we went to our president of Afghanistan. And we said, now we brought pride at home. You have to give us access to football pitch. And then we got the access to football pitch. It was not easy to break the barriers. It was not easy for us, as a first group of women, to make a history. We faced so many problems. We've been through so many sacrifices. We gave a lot in order to stand in the pitch, in order to open the doors of opportunities for the rest of women, to make history, to open or create opportunities for next generations. I played in the first national team of Afghanistan, and I said, my goal was not only playing football in national team. It's more than that. I want to go higher. I want to reach to the top. I wanted to be the voice for voiceless women. And I actually entered in Football Association, the association that never had women employee in their history. And I got a job there. I fought for it. And I got, as a first woman in the history of Football Association, I started working. You can see in the picture, it's all men, only me, in the corner. By the time, my voice became my enemy, because I used football to tell the stories of women who are facing problems in the country, to tell about problems that women are dying for. The corruption that was inside the organizations that I used to work. The man who used to use their power and abuse women. I was talking about corruption. I was addressing directly those men who are involved in abusing, harassing women. I used media as a second tool to tell or to address those problems. And my voice became my enemy. I faced so many death threats. I faced so many problems. I've been through so many sacrifices. I didn't wanted them to stop me for dreaming. I didn't want them to shut my voice. There was a time that I had to leave my country, but I never stopped dreaming. I ended up in Denmark, in asylum center. When I was in asylum center, and I said, that was not a dream. I didn't start playing football. That was not the mission that I ended up in Denmark, in asylum center. My dream became in an international level. I wanted to help not only Afghan women, but women in an international level. I saw women were suffering from depression, from stress in asylum centers. So many women in asylum center was waiting for their asylum cases, and so many wanted to suicide. The situation of women was so horrible in asylum centers. So I wanted to use, again, sports, especially football, as a tool to help them to come out of this depression and stressful situation. And luckily we did. I established my own organization by the name of Girl Power Organization. We are working around Europe. We are providing sport activities and so many workshops to schools, primary schools, especially to teachers, how to use sport as a tool for empowerment and how to use sport to address those issues that minority groups are facing in European societies. We are providing so many activities. We are helping not only women, but also girls who has the immigrant backgrounds. We are helping them to come and practice for their tryout, and then we send them to professional clubs. We are helping them or giving the consultancy. We are helping them to come into integration system, into education system, because when I was in asylum center, there wasn't anyone to help me, so I wanted to help them. So that's why this organization was established. Meantime, I'm also program director for Afghanistan women's national team. I didn't give up. I'm helping the national team of Afghanistan in their international fixtures, fundraising for them, a lot of things we are doing right now. And also I'm leading an online workshop for refugees and girls in Afghanistan. It's the leadership workshop. We want to encourage and create future leaders. All I want to say today, I didn't come here to tell or to present myself as a hero. But what I want to say is that let's support each other. Let's help each other. Let's use sport as a tool to empower, especially women. Women need more attention. There is no peace without women. Let's involve women and let's support each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khalida. For our next speaker, football is a family business. When Jordi Cardoner was born, I'm going to get his name right, sorry. When Jordi Cardoner was born, his grandfather first registered him as a member of FC Barcelona before even registering him for his birth certificate. So he's a lifelong member and the first vice president of FC Barcelona since 2010. His very committed grandfather held that spot for 22 years, until 2003. So Jordi knows a few things about the role of sport in a city like the one where he's from. More people around the world associate the word Barcelona with football rather than the city itself. And the organization has played a vital role in not only attracting people to Barcelona, but in promoting peace, inclusion, and the improvement of people's lives around the world through football. Ladies and gents, Jordi Cardoner.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Parler du Football Club Barcelone pendant 10 minutes,
Talking about Football Club Barcelona
Sans
for 10
parler de
minutes
foot,
without talking about
c'est un
football,
défi.
it's going to be a challenge.
Vous expliquer, faire
And
comprendre
explaining to you and make you
l'expression
understand the expression
Mescon
Mescon
plus qu'un
Club
club,
more than a
c'est
club.
mon deuxième défi.
That's my second challenge.
Résoudre le problème des
And
réfugiés,
solving the problem of refugees.
c'est un rêve. Mon
It's a
rêve,
dream,
c'est imaginer pouvoir guérir tous
namely
les enfants de
thinking
cancer.
that we can heal all
De
the
la
children.
fondation du Football Club Barcelone,
The Football Club
on
Barcelona
travaille avec des
Foundation
enfants.
helps
Et
us
avec des
working
enfants. Des enfants
on
du
with
monde.
4 children in the world.
Des enfants qui n'ont pas eu de la chance.
Children who
On
were
travaille
not lucky.
dans 53 pays
We work in 53 countries
pour plus d'1 060 000
for more than
bénéficiaires.
1,16,000
Et on
beneficiaries.
travaille pour faire les rêves
And we work
réalité.
to make
Sans vouloir
a
être
reality
prétentieux,
out of these dreams. Without being pretentious,
avec les couleurs de nos maillots,
with the colors of our t-shirts,
L'image de nos
the
joueurs.
image of our football players,
des sensations,
sensations and
des
feelings,
émotions,
emotions,
on est capable de
we are able
préparer un médicament
to prepare
efficace.
some kind of efficient
Et là, je
medicine.
vais vous expliquer le comment.
And I'm going to show you how.
Plus qu'un club,
We're more than a club.
l'expression date de 1968.
This
À
expression
l'époque, le
dates back
président
to
du Barça,
1968. At the time, the president of Barça,
Monsieur Mirosans,
Mr. Miro Sanz,
a prononcé ces mots
pronounced these words
pendant une étape difficile en Espagne,
at a
la dictature du
difficult
général Franco.
milestone under the dictatorship of Franco.
On n'avait pas de liberté,
We didn't have
c'était
freedom.
complètement interdit.
Everything-
Parler de la Catalogne,
It was prohibited,
Prendre
forbidden
drapeau
to talk about
et crier
Catalonia,
Vive
to
la
take
Catalogne. À
a
l'époque,
flag
on
and
avait-
say,
on avait un
hooray
refuge
for
au
Catalonia.
Camp Nou.
We had a haven, Camlo, at the
C'était là
time. That was
On
where
était capable de
we
crier
could shout,
Vive la Catalogne en disant
Long
Visca
live
Barça,
Catalonia,
vive le Barça.
saying,
Donc, le drapeau du Barça
Lives
représentait
Barça. So
pendant
Barça
beaucoup de temps,
represented
malheureusement,
for a long time,
nos
unfortunately,
sentiments de pays.
the feeling, the national feeling we had.
Aujourd'hui, les choses ont changé.
Things have
Certainement
changed
pas comme
already.
on voudrait, mais ils ont changé.
Maybe not as we
Aujourd'hui,
wanted, but
le
they
plus
have
qu'un club,
changed. More than a club
voyager. On
today.
est partout au monde.
This slogan has traveled throughout
De la
the
main
world.
d'organisations comme UNICEF,
We work with
ACNUR,
UNICEF, with ACNUR,
UNHCR.
UNHCR,
grâce à des institutions
and thanks to institutions
comme la Fondation,
such as
nous arrivons
the
dans
foundation.
les petits coins.
We managed to get in
Et
the
là, vous me
isolated
permettez
areas.
que je vous présente
And
quelqu'un.
let me present you someone,
Oscar.
Oscar.
Oscar Camps,
Oscar
un
Camps,
Catalan, 53 ans,
53
entrepreneur,
years
trois
old,
sociétés à plus de
entrepreneur. He's got 3
650 personnes.
companies,
Il a quitté Barcelone
650
il y a 2 ans,
employees. He
2015.
left
Il a
Barcelona
quitté
2 years ago
pour faire ce qu'il voulait faire,
to
pour
do what
travailler
he
contre les
dreamed to
injustices.
do, to
a quitté
fight
Barcelone, il est
against
parti à Lesbos.
injustice. He went to
Lui
Lesbos.
et un copain.
A friend of his and
Premier
himself,
jour,
on the
Oscar
first
disait,
day,
aujourd'hui, on a
Oscar
sauvé
said,
déjà 4
we
personnes.
saved
Aujourd'hui, ils
4
sont plus de
people.
300, 2 bateaux.
Today, there are 300
Open Arms,
people,
son
2
projet.
boats. Open Arms, this is
Plus
his
de 300
project.
personnes qui ont déjà
More than
sauvé
300 people
50 000 personnes, entre eux, des
have
enfants,
actually saved more than 50,000 people.
des femmes
Children,
enceintes,
pregnant women,
des personnes qui ne sont pas responsables
people who
des
are not
erreurs
responsible
des
for
adultes.
the mistakes of the
Oscar me
adults.
disait,
Oscar told me,
Aujourd'hui,
Jordi,
je ne parle pas de politique.
I'm not talking about politics.
Excusez-moi, il me disait, je
Sorry,
m'en fous
he said, I
de
don't
pourquoi
care
ces gens-là, ils ont quitté leur
why
pays.
these
La
people
seule
have
des
left
choses
the
que je
country.
veux,
The only
c'est
thing I
sauver
want is
des
to
vies,
save lives,
humains,
to save
des
human
gens
beings.
qui meurent.
People are dying.
Oscar, il travaille sans
Oscar
arrêt. Lui et
has
son
been
équipe,
working
dans
relentlessly
l'anonymat,
with
certainement,
his teams.
vous connaissez pas lui.
anonymously, certainly. You certainly don't know him.
Il me disait,
He said to
je vais
me,
te faire une confidence.
I'm going to say something
Quand
to
on
you.
approche les
When
gens, notre bateau,
we get closer to the people with
se
our
présente.
boat and we
on
introduce
dit, pour les
ourselves,
calmer, on vient de Barcelone, on vient
we
vous
come
aider.
from Barcelona. We come here to help you.
Ils nous parlent de football, ils nous
They
parlent
talk
de Messi,
about
ils nous
football.
parlent de
They talk
Suarez,
about
ils nous
Messi,
parlent de
Suarez,
Iniesta.
Iniesta.
C'est gentil, c'est facile.
It's easy.
Il me
It's
disait,
nice.
50% des Africains
50% of
sont du
African
Barça.
people, they are for Barca.
Sauver des vies. Et maintenant,
Saving
vous me permettez,
lives.
on s'approche
That was
au
one
voyage
thing.
à la ville
And
de
now
Barcelone, ma
we
ville,
go back to the city, to my city, Barcelona,
avec des gens qui travaillent
with people working
aussi pour sauver des vies des
also
enfants.
to save lives,
enfants de
children's
partout au monde.
lives throughout the world,
Dans un centre
in
hospitalier,
a hospital center,
l'hôpital de San Juan de Déu,
San Juan de
une
Leo
référence européenne
Center.
par rapport à
This is a
l'oncologie.
European benchmark
pédiatrique.
hospital for
Un
pediatric
grand projet est devant nous
cancer.
pour eux. C'est le Pediatric Cancer Center.
The Pediatric Cancer
30 millions
Center is
d'investissements
also a
qui sera
landmark.
possible
30
grâce
million
à
of
des
investment.
personnes dans
This is
l'anonymat
possible thanks to donations
qui
from
vont
people
investir
who
à des
have
sociétés
given
qui vont le faire.
anonymously,
Mais surtout, la plupart des gens, des anonymes.
companies,
On va lutter,
individuals.
on va travailler
We are going to work
pour que
together
Pediatric Cancer
for
Center
the Pediatric
devienne
Cancer
le
Center
plus important centre européen, même
to
mondial,
to
pour le
become
traitement du
a
cancer.
world center to fight against
Qu'est-ce
cancer.
qu'il fait le Barça? Qu'est-ce qu'il fait le
What
sport
does
là-dedans?
Barça do? What does sports do in the middle of all this?
Des gens, des enfants,
People,
on a présenté
children,
il y a
We have
quelques mois
presented
le
a
projet
few months ago the project
des petits courageux,
of these small,
des
courageous
garçons, des filles qui souffrent,
children,
qui se battent
boys and girls suffering,
avec des
fighting
grands médecins qui sont à
with
côté d'eux.
great doctors standing
La
beside them.
fille que j'ai dans mes bras,
The small
Je
little
vais
boy
appuyer.
I have in my arms,
c'est Chloé.
actually it's a
tremblait.
girl, it's
Comme les
Chloe. She was trembling.
Loin de sa maladie,
She wasn't thinking about her illness.
elle tremblait parce qu'elle était à
She
10
was
minutes de
shivering
connaître
because
son idole,
she was
Messi,
about to get to
tremblait.
know Messi.
parce qu'ils avaient des émotions,
They had
des
emotions,
sensations très spéciales à côté
very
des grands
special
joueurs.
sensations
de leurs
because they
idoles.
were close to their idols.
Ce projet, c'est grâce à des
This
personnes comme Léo
project,
Messi à travers
this
sa
is thanks
fondation,
to
la
people
fondation
like
Léo
Leo
Messi.
Messi, the Leo Messi
Et là, je ne
Foundation.
parle pas parce que je vous ai dit, c'était mon défi, je ne parle pas
That
de
was
football,
my challenge.
je parle
I
de
didn't
Messi,
talk
personne,
about
pas du grand joueur.
football. I'm not talking about the football player. I'm
C'est lui
talking
qui
about
s'engage, c'est
the
le Messi,
individual. He's
pas
the
avec son
one
maillot,
who's committed. He doesn't have
habillé
his
en jean.
T-shirt,
Ils
his
s'engagent avec
football
ces
T-shirt.
personnes-là.
He's got jeans on. And
Quelques-uns
thanks
sont
to
plus
these
avec
people,
nous
some of them are no
les
longer
aider.
with us.
pour lutter. C'est grâce à ça qu'ils ont fait
Thanks to
une forte
them,
campagne. Maintenant, je vais
We
vous
had a
présenter,
strong campaign.
la petite fille là,
Now I'm going to show you
Carolina.
Carolina.
Elle nous a quittés.
She left
Mais elle a
us.
laissé de l'espoir, elle a
She
laissé
passed
de la
away.
force dans
But
tout
she
l'équipe des
left
médecins.
hope and strength for all the
Elle a commencé à
doctors
travailler
that
dans
she
les
left
racines
behind her.
du nouveau
She
pédiatrique
gave
Cancer Center.
way
Parce que
to
des filles et des
the
enfants
foundation
comme
of the future
auront
cancer center.
certainement une autre
Because
chance.
Other children will
Il y a
have
quelques
another
semaines,
chance.
À
A few
Barcelone,
weeks ago in
Messi a
Barcelona,
reçu
Messi
la chaussure d'or.
received the golden
La
shoe,
chaussure d'or, sa 4e chaussure d'or.
her fourth golden shoe.
Maximum buteur
He's the greatest
d'Europe.
goal player,
Celui-là, c'est le
the
joueur.
greatest goal.
Quelques minutes plus tard,
A few
petit
minutes later,
9 ans,
the small Leia, 9 years
Leucémie.
old, has leukemia,
il lui a apporté son
and
petit cœur
he
d'or
brought a small heart of
à la
gold
personne, à Léo.
to Leo.
C'est pour ça que le sport est important. C'est
This
pour
is
ça
why
que les
sport is so
personnes,
important.
qu'on les connaisse dans les
This
terrains
is
de
why,
jeu,
when we know
ils ont aussi
people on the
d'autres terrains de
pitch,
travail.
they have another pitch
terrain
elsewhere,
personnel.
their personal
Léo
pitch.
ici, il a des enfants.
Leo is here, he's
Il est
got
sensible.
children, he's
Il
sensitive.
est grand dans et hors
It
de
is
terrain.
high time to do something out of the pitch.
Des enfants comme Eyan, comme Miguel,
Children like
comme
Miguel,
Victor, comme Félix,
like Victor, Felix,
Carolina.
Carolina,
comme Erika.
Erika,
Eux,
They
Ils ont d'espoir.
have hope.
Eux,
They
ils ont des noms et des
they
prénoms.
have names, last names,
D'autres.
first names.
Ils ont fini leur vie dans
Some
les bateaux,
passed away
dans
in
le fond
boats
de l'océan.
in the bottom of the
Et le
sea.
pire,
And the worst
dans
is
l'anonymat.
anonymously. Thank you.
Merci, Jordi.
Thank you, Georgie.
Our next speaker is quite possibly one of my favorite people in the world. And how she got started in sport has given me a lesson in how to raise my own daughter. When she was a little girl, Fatuma Adan's father took her to football matches. And that was unusual in rural, tribal Kenya, where only men watched football and played football. She watched from the sidelines and one day decided she wanted to play. There was no real ball, so they made one with rubbish and went to the pitch, which was full of boys. Can we play a joint game, she asked the boys. And after a half hour of arguing, the boys finally agreed. And it was the first time Fatuma ever kicked a ball. Today, she's a lawyer and a football player, and she also runs the Horn of Africa Development Initiative, which promotes peaceful resolution of conflicts by using football to engage soldiers and young people. And their slogan is shoot to score, not to kill. Ladies and gentlemen, Fatuma Adan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Yasser, for the introductions, and thank you to Peace and Sport for the invitation. I'm not even supposed to be here, because as a girl, dressed the way I'm dressed, I'm supposed to be married, and a grandmother now. But when I was 6 years old, my father took my hand, and together we walked for over 2 kilometers to go and watch a game of football. I was the only girl in the room. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, but every time there is a game of football, he'll always take me with him, and my younger sister also. And along the way, I realized, he has introduced me to something that one day I will fall in love with. But what I didn't know is, I'm not allowed to play. Not football, not any game. The only reason is I was born a girl. For my brothers, they were lucky they were born boys. At the age of 12, I watched a game between Cameroon and England. And I thought for the first time, Africa is going to win for us. But they didn't, they lost. And from that day on, something was born in me, a passion that I could not let go of. Unlike other girls in my village who are married by the age of 12, I was watching football, not in a real stadium, but on the screen. And because we didn't have a television, we will walk the 2 kilometers literally religiously to go and watch a game of football. My dad invested in my education. He was a teacher. My mom never went to school. So for her, she literally lived her dreams through me. So seeing me through school and making sure I go to high school was her dream. And true to her dream, I went to high school. But I wasn't just ready to be a secretary, a nurse, a teacher, what everybody else will describe for me as a profession. I wanted to be an advocate. And everybody looked at me like, for a girl from northern Kenya, this is a no-no. You cannot be an advocate. And I finished high school. I passed, and I went to university, and I did my law degree, and I became an advocate. And I was admitted to the bar, and that was the happiest day for my dad. And he said, now that you have your law degree, I want you to live in the city, live in Nairobi, and don't come back to the village, because every other time, the guns are always being shot, and people are being killed. It's not safe being in the village. It would have been so nice to live in the city, drive a cool Mercedes-Benz, live in a big house, maybe marry a rich guy. But that is not what I wanted. There was something in me that was still burning. The law corridors felt too small. I wanted a football pitch. It's not allowed. So I go back home, and I'm sitting down, and I'm telling my dad, he asked, what are you doing here? You should be in court in Nairobi, practicing your law degree and earning some good money. I'm like, no, I want to play football. And he looks at me like, what? Play football? This is the same old man who took my hand when I was 6 years old and took me to watch a football game. When I was 12, when I'm supposed to be married, he's the same man who took me to watch another game again. And over, I kept on watching, but it's always from the sidelines. I wasn't playing. And while I came back home with my law degree, and I was helping the young girls who were being forcefully married, taking their cases up, I found something else. All the legislation we had, all the conventions we signed as a country, were not in practice. There was a huge gap between the actual law and the policy and the practice in the village. Because in the village, it's the elders who decided on the cases. So rape will be solved out of court, defilement will be solved out of court, divorce cases will be solved out of court. And elders will sit around under a tree, and this is where decisions are made. Not a single woman was allowed under the tree. I'm like, okay, it's a huge task now. The courts were empty because the cases don't make it there. So how do I change the mentality of the men in the village, but create a space for the women, but at the same time work with the younger girls in the school, in the villages? Shoot to Score, Not to Kill was born in 2005. One day, in July, there was a massacre in Marsabit. 100 children were killed. Their only crime, they were different tribe from the ones who were coming to fight. Unknown to me by then, I didn't know my own mother was a different tribe. My dad was one tribe, my mom was another. And here I am now with mixed blood. And my question to my elders and to my people was, if you can separate the blood in me to be Borana and Gabra, then you guys can start fighting. For as long as my blood is mixed and it's not fighting, I don't even understand why you guys are fighting. I was just talking alone. Again, it was the elders. No women, no young people. And with just a ball made out of trash, I walked to the field, and I asked the young boys, can we put the AK-47 down, and can we play a game of football? And they looked at me with a ball made out of trash. An AK-47 is so powerful. What is she saying? But I knew from the beginning that this is a very powerful tool, football. And it's the only thing that can silence the guns. And I didn't rest. And every day there is a gunshot, I don't run away from it, I run to it to find out who fired that shot and how can I bring that person into my football. With Shoot to Score, Not to Kill, we have 3 halves. The third half is for dialogue. And within this dialogue, then we mix the teams, the tribes, and they're able to dialogue with each other and at one-on-one level and not look at each other as one tribe as another. And slowly, we started changing the mindset of the young people and talking to their heart. Yes, the AK-47 is a powerful tool you can carry around, fire a shot, take someone's life. With my football, no blood is shed, only sweat. No life is lost. Actually, more people are drawn to the football, and he has given birth to many young generations of peace builders. I'll share with you the story of 2 young people who have come through our football. One is of a young girl who came to me when she was 12 years old. And she said to me, I want to bring a team to play in your league. I'm like, have you ever played football? No. How are you going to put the team together? And she said, just give me a chance. And I knew from myself, if my dad did not hold my hand and take me to go and watch football, I will not be here today. And I said to the girl, okay, I'm giving you a chance. She surprised everybody, no coach, 0 training in football. And every time a goal was scored against her team, she'll break down and cry, scream to her teammates not to let any other goal in. That girl, Abale, she won the tournament, but she did not only win the tournament. Today she's in high school, and she will be the one taking over from me once I leave my organization. The second is of a young boy called Hussein. Hussein came to me when he had finished primary school, but we started with him when he was 9 years old. He almost committed suicide because the parents didn't have any money to pay for his school fees. And being drawn into violence, really, even you're paid even to join Al-Shabaab, which is like a terrorist group in northern Kenya. But through football, we've been able to literally transform him from what he would have been, like going out there and fighting with the gun. Now he fights with the ball. And he also trains other young people not to go into violence. Instead, through Shoot to Score, Not to Kill, he helps them change the mindset and see why peace is so important. Because in northern Kenya now, and the rest of Horn of Africa, how are we described? It's hunger, it's drought, it's deaths. We need to change this narrative. Nobody's going to do for us, and maybe even for the whole of Africa. And for me, as a veiled woman, people see someone who needs to be rescued. I don't need to be rescued. Just give me the ball, I'll score the goals myself. And it's high time. I think we invest in foot soldiers like myself and others who are out there silencing the guns. And I know all of us here do one thing or another. But the question to each one of you, we are all standing on the sidelines and cheering. I want you guys to get involved in the game. Get into the pitch with me. Get into the pitch with other foot soldiers who are out there doing the work that I'm doing. To just bring it all home, I know there are different challenges the world is facing today, from terrorism, other conflicts around the world. Climate change is another big monster that is going to consume all of us. But what options does sport offer? What options does football offer? And I'm looking at all the possibilities that football offers. And for me, Shoot to Score, Not to Kill has literally silenced the guns in my villages. Today, in 152 villages, we're sitting together with the same elders whom I was told, no, you cannot even talk to them, no, women are not allowed under this tree. 60% of those villages now have women sitting under the tree with the elders to make decisions. 1,500 girls today are playing football, and we are breaking the silence on issues which we cannot discuss openly, things like FGM, female genital mutilation, early forced marriages, and even the right to be in school. And we could not have done it without football. And for the young people who are literally now leaving Africa, coming to Europe, it's out of vulnerability. And all the conflicts happening around the world, nobody else can stop it. Me and you can stop it. The young people who are carrying the guns, I don't have the powers to close down the factories, but I have the power to silence those guns and make sure no bullet is fired. The only bullet that will be fired will be the one of football, not the metallic one. And through this, then we will be able to change the mindsets of the young people we work with and ensure that they stay within the villages, they stay within the cities, make these cities safer so that they see the opportunities and they'll be able to grow into something better. But you need to hold my hand. It's been very lonely because literally I'm living on the edge. I don't know if I'll be there tomorrow. And unless each of you literally invest into what I am doing and other foot soldiers on the ground, then we will be singing the same song over and over again, and nothing changes. But imagine for 1 second if all of us here invested in shooting to score, not to kill. How will the world be? Imagine a world where the guns will be there, yes, because the factories still produce them, but no young people carry them. No young people fire the bullets. Imagine a world where a girl like me, who is supposed to be married and a grandmother, I have a choice and I have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatuma. Thank you very much for this. It was a great witness. Thank you very much. I wish it's working.
Thank you.
You will still be there.
Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you very much. One more applause. Thank you, Yashir, for moderating this session. We'd love to react now to the drawing of Faro, if we can have it. We'll have, just to summarize this session, Faro made another drawing on a, well, we had very, very good witness. Here we are.
There's no Q&A.
This is it. That's the one. Urban regeneration through sport. Playing ice hockey on that. Thank you very much. Merci pour ce petit moment. Voilà, vous pouvez l'applaudir. Some more applause on Faro. And we go right away on the last session of the day. We have another jingle. The dawn of digital solutions. And Yashir Khan, I will give you the floor again to present the panel of presenters. Thank you very much. Merci.
I haven't seen you guys in a while. How have you been? Welcome back. So we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about the dawn of digital solutions. When I first started as head of digital video at Al Jazeera English, the number one thing that my TV colleagues would say to me was, well, digital is the future. And that would make me upset. I'd say, no, it's not the future, it's the past and the present. I was checking email in 1994. I've had a calculator since the 80s. Technology, and especially digital technology, has been in our lives for decades now. And that's not very interesting. But what is interesting is what our next group of speakers are doing with it to promote the spirit of competition, teamwork, and inclusion. So our first speaker today has helped the visually impaired to play sports for most of his life. Last night on the bus, Elias Mastouras told me a story that has stuck with me since last night. 21 years into his career, he wrote a fairy tale book about chess in Braille for blind people. And he was asked to narrate that book for a school. And while he was doing that, he met a 3-year-old boy who was blind. And Elias gave the boy a regulation football, which weighed about half a kilo. And then he realized that the ball was too heavy for a child that size, which set him on a course. He said to me, it took me 21 years of involvement in blind football to realize the need for a football for blind children. Elias is now the founder of the Youth Educational Sports Center, Youthorama, and a coordinator with the International Blind Sports Federation. Elias, please come to the stage.
Let me introduce you Pat the Panda, and we'll speak in a while about that. So thank you for the invitation. And my name is Elias Mastouras. I'm a youth trainer and also referee coordinator in blind football. So the speech will be about a ball for all, a goal for inclusion. So we're talking about inclusion, and thanks for the nice words, Yasir, about that. And my vision is to create more inclusive societies. And we applied for a project about, in blind football, everybody wins. It has been approved by Erasmus Plus Sport, and the idea was like the perception of a blind person, when we see this person in our society, is walking with a cane or with a guide dog and having some obstacles in front of him or her. But having a perception of this person, and as an athlete in blind football, throw away the cane and starts running among other blind footballers. So let's have a look of our campaign in blind football, Everybody Wins. So here you can see my flatmate for 7 years, Stratos from Greece. And in blind football, you see a collaboration of sighted people and blind footballers. And here we invite athletes from Turkey and Russia.
In blind football, everybody wins.
And these are volunteers in our Youthorama NCO. Everybody wins. And now you see the athlete away from the field with a cane again. So I would like to be more interactive. How many of you have you seen blind football? Can you raise a hand? So yes, thank you very much. So instead of speaking, let's watch. And you will see 45 seconds of the last semi-final in the Paralympic Games in Rio. This is Zefinho. He was born blind in a sighted family. The ball has some rings, and that means some bells inside, and that makes it even heavier. The goalkeepers are sighted, but they can score against sighted goalkeeper. And here, the same player. So a rhetoric question is like, if we see so many competent athletes, why we don't know them? Why the media, they focus only on very competent, but if we say that football is one, why is not promoting to the media also blind football? So we need to have education behind, and we need also to sell in a way about this sport. So let's see about the promotion of the GB team before the Paralympic Games.
Yes, I can. 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 Yes, I can.
Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes.
That's a message. Yes, we all can. Although the reality sometimes, it was less 1 second. No, you can't. And we are here because we can make our dreams come true. And what we need is also, as I said before, convince everybody, also the major clubs and famous people, to present to their societies about our values in our society. So what we did here this year, through this also the program, we went to Qatar, and it was a National Day of Sports, and Xavi Hernandez was there to present for the first time the ball, but I will also present to you in a while. So here you will see also famous, other famous footballers that were living in Qatar, and also other athletes, but it was the first time that blind athletes from Qatar, they tried to simulate and play together with famous people blind football. So that was also an idea that you can see also Stratos traveling around the world. He's the ambassador of in Blind Football Everybody Wins campaign to convince every one of you that it's worthy to see football in different disciplines. So we have also here our perspectives from educational background, and you will see that, yes, it is important to focus on Olympic and Paralympic Games, but it's once every 4 years. Is it enough? Or do we need to have educational programs during these 4 years for the values that we have also for the Olympic and the Paralympics? So here you will see a video from Japan in Tokyo 2015. On the way to Rio, Japan was playing against Malaysia. And I was a referee coordinator in that game. You will see that it was heavy raining. The media was there, they were covering, also because in Japan they have many educational programs in schools, and I was a referee coordinator in that time. As you can see, the score was like 2-0, 2 minutes before the end, and here was about to make the fatal mistake. Both teams, they knew that it was not possible to qualify for Rio. And I told them, have a look, it's raining so heavy. Let's finish the game 2 minutes before. And they said, no, both captains. And let's have a look now. Everybody was crying. Everybody was there under heavy rain to give an applause to blind footballers, but you didn't make it. But we are going to meet in 5 years because Tokyo 2020, it will be the next Olympic and Paralympic venue. But you will see also the educational programs that we have in this country. In every year, we have 500 different schools in Japan, but they educate for the values, and they present also blind football. Let's see the next video. It comes also from Japan.
正吾にパスが通った。行くぞユキ。これが俺たちの必殺技だ。音が。ボールはどこだ。空中のボール。音は聞こえなくとも。ボールは俺たちのゴール前だ。正吾からのパスは必ず俺の体のどこかに当たる。ボールは。おい。ここだ。
Nowadays, all children, sighted and blind ones, they are crazy about football, because football is one. And now in Greece, we invented or have innovated mini-blind football. So it took me 21 years, actually, to realize that there was not such a ball for blind children. There is none. There was only for adults, a very heavy one. And when I wrote a fairy tale about chess and a school for blind in Greece, they told me, let's come and narrate it for small children. I gave to a 3-year-old child a very heavy ball. I say, what have I done? I lost 20 years of my life not thinking. But there should be also a ball, like the ones that we present you here, a ball that is for all children. Everybody can play. We go now to general schools for awareness, but we also donate it to blind children in need. And I got a message from Cyprus that we deliver balls for free to around the world, also in Cyprus. But a child, a blind child, fall asleep with a ball on the shoulder. So that's the most amazing dream for us to make it true. So we try to convince everybody that everybody has a right to dream, like a panda. And I will tell you a story that maybe some of you are aware. 2 months ago, a few kilometers from here, in a major, very famous club, 2 very famous people, athletes, footballers, were debating, they have a conflict, who will kick a penalty. Are you aware of this story? Yeah, thank you very much. So the president of this club said, okay, I'm going to find a solution. I'm going to give 1 million euros to one of the players not to kick a penalty. This player said no. And now we have to understand how ethical is to give 1 million euros not to kick a penalty. And after all, there are so many blind children that they would like to kick a penalty. So how ethical is not to give the money to very competent footballers and not to blind children? So I think that maybe I made a mistake with my presentation overall. Thank you very much for this small presentation. I hope that also encourage you to be focused more about our vision, is how to donate mini-blind footballs for all children. So thank you very much, and just a big applause also thank you for coming here, and the Prince Albert also took a picture of me. Thank you very much. See you very soon.
Thank you, Elias. Our next speaker is on a mission to prove that the values of sports can go beyond any particular medium, and has used digital technology and gaming to engage young people. As a high school student athlete, Zach Weigel found himself at odds with coaches and teachers who discouraged his love and enthusiasm for video games, often saying that the video games were a complete waste of time. But he proved them all wrong. 10 years later, Zach is the founder of Gamers Outreach, a nonprofit organization which uses interactive technologies to provide relief and recreation to nearly 200,000 children in hospitals across the United States. He was recently named one of Forbes magazine's top 30 under-30s for the class of 2017. Please welcome Zach Weigel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the Peace and Sport organization for the incredible privilege to be here with you all. And I have to say, it's very humbling hearing a lot of the stories that we've listened to from some of the other speakers, to hearing some of the things that you guys are using to address the societal changes happening in your countries is quite humbling. You might be wondering why a video game enthusiast is here at a sports conference, and it might seem like a funny thing. But for the past 10 years, I've been working through an organization called Gamers Outreach that I founded in high school. And we've been trying to provide recreation and entertainment to children in hospitals all around the United States. We specifically started working on this initiative after realizing there were a number of children that were going through long-term care that oftentimes couldn't access rehabilitative programs away from their bedside. Some of the patients we work with are in the hospitals for months and in rare cases years. And simply put, they're not able to enjoy some of the familiar pastimes that kids can normally access if they're able to get to playrooms or even participate in sports outside of the playground. And so, of course, for these children, we start asking ourselves, well, how can we translate some of the same values that exist in sports into the bedside environment and ensure that these children, perhaps that either have illnesses or some type of disability, aren't left behind? Before I start talking about that, and specifically how we're using video games to work with children going through some of these traumatic experiences, I'd like to kind of back up a little bit and talk about the significance, in my own opinion, of video games in the industry, and recently what is kind of known as the rise of esports and digital recreation. This is a picture from a few years ago when I was a high school student. I competed in track and field throughout the United States. Growing up as a high schooler at that time, I was kind of born during a period of time where technology was just becoming proliferated. Desktop computers were becoming more and more mainstream in the United States. My own father was actually a computer science major, and so growing up, we always had access to technology around the household. So of course, video games were sort of a familiar pastime. And I use this personal example not to brag about any type of sports achievements, because they are, trust me, few and much humbler than some of the athletes we have here in our midst. But just to illustrate that I think we now live in a new paradigm where both sports and digital recreation coexist. Oftentimes when I was participating in regular sports, I got a lot of flack from my high school teachers and coaches who oftentimes looked at video games as sort of just a waste of time. But I never saw them as that. Stereotypically, video games are sort of seen as an antisocial activity. And you might think that a lot of people that play video games and a lot of young people growing up that enjoy this pastime are really just sort of a bunch of nerds in their basement. Well, to be honest with you, that's slightly true. This is my basement growing up as a youngster. I would always invite friends over to my house to play video games with each other. So you might think gamers today sit at home alone by themselves, only interacting on the internet. But in my own experience, that's actually quite the opposite. Video games, like sports, are a conduit for socialization. I would often invite friends over to my home to participate in what's called a LAN party. Gamers would connect over what's called a local area network and be able to play games in the same room and even go out online together as a team to compete against other players from around the world. This digital form of recreation has become now quite the norm around the world. It's kind of left the confines of the basement, and technology generally is as widespread as it ever could possibly be. Most of us in this room have smartphone devices, and I'd like to use just one game as an example of this. This is a photograph of a video game called Pokemon Go. Players can walk around their real environments and collect digital creatures that exist in the real world. It's called a form of augmented reality. This one game has been downloaded 750 million times by players all around the world. And just to help understand the significance of that, that number represents about 10% of the current estimate of the global population. The popularity and the rise of popularity in video games is largely attributed partially to the proliferation of technology in our lives and has given rise to what we refer to as esports. There are certain games that lend themselves to high levels of competition. And similar to golf, players that are familiar with these pastimes enjoy watching high levels of competitive play. Now, there's been some discussion, especially if you've been paying attention to recent news, around whether or not video games are considered a sport by the sake of at least definition. You know, going back to my track example, when I was younger, I had a coach who often made a distinction between athletics and sports. I don't think it's a perfect definition, but I think it's a good framework to sort of think about whether or not we may consider video games as being a sport and whether or not they have a platform globally when we think of things like the Olympic Games or fostering activities that can be enjoyed worldwide. My coach would say athletics are measures of physical human prowess. When we think of running, jumping, swimming, endurance, these are all sort of your traditional Greek athletic sports that measure physical capability. Sports, according to his definition, was the gamification of athletics. Anytime you attach points to physical ability or you introduce a play mechanism where people are competing against each other, he defined that as sports. Now, somewhere on that spectrum, we know that video games are certainly competitive. They're being played at a very high level. The proliferation of games is actually creating opportunities where sports organizations in the US are now starting to invest in actual teams that compete and carry the banners of their players. And these events are selling out major stadiums. The same stadiums we use for traditional sports in the US are being used to host wide-scale video game tournaments. And this is happening not just in the US, but around the world. So I think we have to ask ourselves, where do video games fall on the spectrum? But I would even propose that, honestly, that question isn't as important as the following. How do we as sports enthusiasts convey the same values that exist and have been found to be valuable in sports through video games? There's no question that video games are being enjoyed by a wide number of young people throughout the world. And esports is really very much in its infancy. There are people around the world right now that are trying to create official governing bodies for various esports events. And I believe there are a number of people in this room that have a strong amount of experience that could help the esports world grow into maturity and translate many of the same values that exist in sports through digital activities. Let me give you an example of this and why it's important in the healthcare environment. The work I've been involved with has received a lot of support from video game enthusiasts around the country. I started hosting video game tournaments when I was very young. From those tournaments, we started donating some of the ticket sales to different charity organizations that sounded interesting. I got very involved in my local hospital, where I realized video games were a very familiar pastime to a number of patients, and healthcare professionals were often relying on games as a way to provide children with access to activities. In fact, there were even times where healthcare professionals would use games as a way to help motivate kids to leave their bedside environment and participate in rehabilitative activities. This is actually a friend of mine, J.J. Bouchard, who's a child life specialist in a hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He uses Pokemon Go to help motivate kids to explore the hospital and become familiar with their environment. Now, we often, as I said earlier, work with patients that can't leave their bedside for whatever reason. The organization I manage, Gamers Outreach, has been constructing these portable video game kiosks that are deployed inside hospitals around the US. These are tools for healthcare professionals to ensure digital activities are accessible and manageable inside healthcare settings. One of the interesting things that's happened because of this is we found that video game enthusiasts have actually been able to volunteer inside hospitals as digital activity managers. They're helping healthcare professionals go around, provide games to kids, solve minor tech problems, and they're even interacting with children, providing a sense of mentorship and play buddies, if you will, to help guide kids through the recovery process. It's interesting because in the sports world, traditionally, you also see the same thing. We were just listening to how people like Messi are able to leverage their collective reach and power and celebrity to help benefit those who are maybe going through trying times. Well, it turns out the same thing exists in the video game industry. Now, we're organized as a nonprofit, and so similar to other charity organizations, we have our own fundraisers. This is actually a photograph from a very large video game tournament we host called Gamers for Giving. We invite video game enthusiasts to bring in their own computers and video game consoles, and we broadcast the entire event online. Last year, we generated about 1.3 million stream views from our online broadcast and received over 5,000. We had over 5,000 individual contributors help us raise $300,000 in the course of a day. Some of the people who come out are, quote unquote, maybe you might consider them to be internet celebrities. We have folks who have large YouTube followings and social media followings that will attend our event, and they host these online broadcasts to ask for donations to support the work we're doing in the hospital environment. This is a girl named May who made a donation to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. She built one of our gaming carts back a few years ago. And within 2 weeks of receiving this cart, a parent came forward, wrote us a check for $20,000 and said, please construct us more units. My child has brain cancer. She's playing video games all the time. This is one of the only ways that she's able to interact with friends or other patients or have access to activities. This is a well-known gamer named Mike Chavez who belongs to an esports organization called Optic Gaming. He has hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers and similarly was able to raise money to build gaming carts for a hospital in Chicago. I hope that gives you some idea of how we're able to use video games directly in the healthcare environment to help aid the healthcare process. We're often finding that aside from entertainment, games are actually helping kids to recover, surprisingly. We have some patients we work with that have a high degree of anxiety from the treatments that they're receiving, and healthcare professionals are able to introduce video games as a way to start a dialogue with kids, help them become familiar with treatment, and generally lower the anxiety, improve patient outcomes to the extent that rather than fearing treatment, children are able to play video games and have a sense of joy and a sense of hope for recovery. I think this is important to keep in mind because in the sports industry, it's easy to write off video games as just a hobbyist pastime. But I would encourage all of you, as you are interacting with folks in the esports industry, which I'm sure will be a topic that comes up in recent years going forward, to look to see how you can perhaps leverage your own experience and translate this into the esports community. The esports world could greatly benefit from a lot of the values that exist in sports, and I think many of you in this room could lend your expertise. And I think it's important to also keep in mind that it's, in my opinion, important to be concerned with the message more so than the medium. You can communicate a lot of the same messages you're trying to convey through sports with things like esports, and you can reach today's youth in a way that is relevant and meaningful to them. I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to be here, and I hope you'll get involved in the esports space. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Our last speaker for the day is an Olympic gold medalist, but the thing that I like about him the most is that he's married to a Canadian and lives in my country, Canada. Steve Mesler is a three-time Olympian, world champion, and won gold in bobsledding at the 2010 Winter Olympics. He's on the board of directors at the United States Olympic Committee and the co-founder and CEO of the NGO Classroom Champions, an organization that's turned hundreds of Olympians, Paralympians, and professional athletes into mentors for more than 25,000 at-risk youth across North America through digital technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Mesler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Mesler, and for about a decade, this was my job. Somewhere. Well, my job was to bobsled. And there we go. So this was my job for about a decade. And for those of you who don't remember the amazing, awesome, incredible movie Cool Runnings, let me explain to you what bobsled is. My job was to run and sit for a minute. That was it. That was my whole job. No, really, that was my thing, running and sitting. Today, and yes, I did know the Jamaicans. Today, I wear a relatively more comfortable, yet a little less flexible suit, but of course over my bobsled suit, because you just never know when you're going to need it. Today, probably my biggest problem is that I come running into a room and then sit really close to everybody when we get to a meeting. So those are my current struggles. How do you mentor 25,000 youth with some of our world's best athletes, from Paralympians to Olympic gold medalists to NFL players, and allow them to connect within a system that can replicate oftentimes life-saving techniques by giving them nothing more than this? Because that's what's happening across North America today. Our athletes are giving back, our athletes are getting engaged, and we're using those athletes that are in the midst of their careers, solving a big challenge that we've always had with engaging athletes. Now, to listen to a little bit about how we actually got there, we'll go back to right outside my training residence back in 2009. I was training for the Olympics back in Vancouver. And I was outside of my house in Calgary, and I was on the phone with my sister, who was getting her PhD. She's a lot smarter than me. She was getting her PhD in education, and she had been teaching at this public school in Brooklyn, at a low-income school in Brooklyn. And she was explaining to me the stuff that her kids were going through and what she was seeing. And she was seeing that 25% of her kids were proficient in reading and math, and her as a teacher and her fellow teachers were less experienced and had less tools than their wealthier peers. Then she would talk a little bit more about her kids, and she would talk to me about those kids would, oftentimes be coming from single-parent families where their parent would have a lower education attainment and often would be working multiple jobs. So these kids would come home, and instead of getting help on their homework, they would have to take care of their brothers or sisters and babysit. And they didn't really have anybody around them who could show them that there was a different world, show them that if they worked hard, they can get better. And really simply put, her kids were starting a 100-meter race 40 meters behind. And not only that, instead of wearing track spikes, they were wearing Crocs on their shoes. And we wanted to do something about that because that really resonated with me. I'd done what a whole lot of athletes in this room have done before, or a lot of people in this room have done before. I would go and I would visit a classroom, and I would give a talk, and I'd get all pumped up, and kids would cheer, and they would go crazy, and then I'd leave. And then I'd never see those kids again. And we knew that we could have a better impact than that. Because at the end of the day, kids, especially those living in poverty, need a relationship with the people that they're going to learn from in order to learn. So those one-off visits, there's only a few things available to an athlete back when I was competing that actually let you give back in a positive way. And those ways were putting your name on something, going and visiting a school like that, or taking a trip to a village in Africa and helping. Those one-off things did not make a difference, and they didn't resonate with me. Making impact and making change is glacial. It takes a long time. We wanted to show kids it just wasn't 2.5 weeks of glory on television, that there was a process to get there. Now, a lot of us have struggled in school or had struggles in life, and I'm going to tell you about somebody I know, and his name is Chris. Chris was an 8th grader who had such a bad speech impediment that he was getting bullied and picked on by kids so badly that he decided that he wasn't going to speak outside of his home for 2 years. Chris didn't say anything. And right before this picture was taken, Chris did something that made his teacher weep uncontrollably right in the middle of class. Now, Chris comes from a place called Camden, New Jersey. So Camden's right across the river from Philadelphia in the US. Camden is riddled with high crime and poverty. And if you're a citizen of Camden, you're 6 times more likely to be exposed to a violent crime than anywhere else in the country. Now, we had matched Chris's class with this guy, Lex Gillette. Lex is a Paralympic silver medalist who lost his sight right around the same age as Chris. He's a long jumper who's gone on to win multiple Paralympic silver medals, set world records, and graduate from university. We put somebody in Chris's class that these kids could look up to and could learn from on a consistent basis. So on a monthly basis or on a regular basis, Lex would be sending his videos to his kids, and those kids would start sending videos back. And one day, a shy student walked up to his teacher, Miss Martinez, in class, and said to his teacher, "I want to send Lex something." And she said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I want to send Lex something." So Miss Martinez pulled Chris around to the edge of the corner and started her video camera as she started to cry. And Chris spoke his first words in school for the first time in 2 years to send Lex what perseverance meant to him. That's the way that kids form relationships these days. They form them through technology. You heard it right before me. You're going to continue to hear it. So as athletes, as sportsmen, that's what we've decided to do, is connect through technology and give kids a voice. Not just tell them what to do, but give them an opportunity to share that back to Lex. Today, Chris is a thriving student in 10th grade. He's got a friend group. He's still shy. He's still living in Camden, but now he's found a way to engage with his community and make an impact on his community, and I couldn't be prouder of him. So as my sister and I were still on that phone back to Calgary, we decided that we wanted to actually do something that would make a difference. So we adopted a bunch of classrooms, and teachers applied, 8 in America and 1 in Canada, and we wanted to form real relationships with kids. So I started sending videos from where I was in Austria on the way to the Olympic Games. And kids started sending videos back, and they started telling me about how inspired they were and how excited they were. And then we decided that we would do more than that, because we didn't start it to start a nonprofit. We just started it because we wanted to make a difference before I was done retiring. But all of a sudden, athletes started coming up to me and saying, well, I want to do that. I want to get involved. So since then, we've had tons of athletes get involved because, you know what, at the end of the day, over 51% of our kids, or 51% of our population as in June 2017, is online. It's 3.8 billion people. 3.8 billion people that are not only connected to the internet, or Taylor Swift, or that song, Despacito. Come on, no one knows that one? But they're connected to each other. So over 100 athletes have now gotten involved, from Olympic champions to Paralympians to Olympic hopefuls to student athletes to NFL players have gotten involved, and we match them with over 10 classrooms each. And they communicate on a yearly basis with their kids. And they're mentoring classrooms. And you know what happens? All of a sudden, those teachers start getting engaged. And remember how I talked about my sister being at a school that had less resources for teachers? Well, all of a sudden, teachers started having their growth mindset change. So we started a program that actually would develop teachers. And we've seen teachers like Brent Nietzsche from Brooklyn, New York, who's credited Olympic athletes with saving his career. Who would have thought that an athlete connecting with kids would save a teaching career? All of a sudden, the Crocs started coming off of these kids as we started to go. Today's programming costs less than 5% of the traditional one-on-one mentoring programs that we know. We've partnered with NGOs. We've worked with universities to engage Ivy League students to be mentors. We've partnered with NFL teams to get pro football players to be mentors. We've partnered with corporate social responsibility programs to put athlete mentors into the furthest northern regions of Canada's Indigenous communities, into the streets, and into the urban areas of America. Today's ecosystem has reached over 25,000 kids, and we're scaling up. We're starting to go now. We've created this virtual parasocial relationship. Now, a parasocial relationship is how you get really excited and happy when your football team wins, and you get really sad when your football team loses, or how you get really sad when your favorite Game of Thrones character is killed. We've actually made that parasocial relationship real, so now that football player knows these kids and communicates with these kids and cheers for them when they're succeeding and gives them an extra cheer when they're failing. Lex Gillette, as I mentioned before, has mentored over 1,500 kids within our system. But not only somebody like Chris who we're giving a voice to, we're changing the culture of school. We've seen reductions in bullying by 63%. 99% of our teachers tell us that goal setting is improved in kids. We're seeing improvements in grades, attendance, growth mindset. We're changing the fabric of how classrooms work, and we're putting an Olympic mindset into the classroom, into these areas where these kids need it the most. But Chris isn't the only one that we want to affect. Our goal is to reach millions and millions of kids and connect them with athletes and mentors and build the culture in their classrooms, and that's why I'm here today. I am here today because we're looking for corporate partners and foundations to put funding behind us to secure our operations. I'm here today because we're looking for tech companies to put technology into our schools and give them internet. And we're here today because we want to partner with Olympic committees and pro sports leagues to utilize their greatest assets, their athletes that are still on the field of play today, and connect them with kids around the world. Millions of kids like Chris need support from our athletes, and we need rooms like this to get behind us. So come with us on this journey. Let's go. And if you're like me, you believe every kid deserves a champion. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Was nice. No question. There will be. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Champions for Peace also with us. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Yesh, for moderating this. We have to conclude, and we will do it with the drawing of Pharaoh. let's see how he saw that, the dawn of digital solution. That's a good summary of what we saw. Thank you very much for attending this session. Now I will invite you to leave the room and also go in just a few minutes. We will have a diplomatic event in the Salle des Palmiers, diplomatic event in kickboxing with Ukraine and Russia athletes. So please join us over there. And we'll be back here at 6 for the gala, for the 10th anniversary of the gala, plus the awards later on. And Joel will make a speech also. We will have His Royal Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco will address to you. So merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir été avec nous. Thank you very much. That ends this new session. Merci. Good evening, and we see you in la Salle des Palmiers for diplomatic event. Merci à la technique. Thank you.